Do you want a medal, Reina, or just a pat on the head? Theo Madsen said it loud enough for the glass-walled conference room to hear, like humiliation was a team-building exercise. I kept my smile polite, the kind I perfected while watching men with half my output collect twice my applause. A paycheck that matches my work would be practical, I said. But I understand practicality is not your brand. A few people snorted. Theo's grin tightened. He enjoyed an audience, but he hated a punchline he did not control. We were seated at the long obsidian table at Brackwell Systems Group, the company that had swallowed 15 years of my life, the way a furnace swallows wood. Efficiently, quietly, without gratitude. I started here at 18 with a badge that still smelled like fresh plastic and a job title that sounded like a consolation prize. Logistics assistant. It meant I did everything no one wanted to admit mattered. I learned the business in the gaps between disasters. I learned which suppliers lied politely and which ones lied dangerously. I learned which departments needed data and which ones needed a gentle shove disguised as a spreadsheet. I learned how to solve problems without triggering fragile egos. I worked my way up through operations planning, vendor strategy, and contract execution until I sat in rooms like this and pretended I belonged there. I did belong there. They simply refused to say it out loud. On the screen behind Theo was a slide deck labeled the Madsen Initiative. Bright colors, clean fonts, elegant lies. It was my project, my model, my vendor consolidation plan, my risk map, my negotiation sequence. I recognized every choice, every pivot, every contingency tucked into the margins like a secret weapon. I also recognized my name nowhere. Theo clicked to the next slide and said, "We reduced procurement costs significantly and stabilized delivery performance." He said we like he had carried anything heavier than a latte. I raised my hand, because sometimes you have to set a match near gasoline just to see who runs for the extinguisher. "Which suppliers did we drop, and why?" I asked. "And what did we replace them with?" Theo blinked like I had asked him to recite an apology in public. One of the senior directors, Marina Quell, glanced up from her phone with mild annoyance. "Reina," she said, stretching my name like it was a complaint. "We do not need to drill into details. The board wants outcomes." "Details are outcomes," I replied. "Outcomes do not float in the air on positive thinking." Theo tapped his clicker again, too fast. The next slide flashed a savings number that had my signature all over it. Not my actual signature, of course. Brackwell had a talent for erasing fingerprints while keeping the stolen jewelry. "Look," Theo said, voice slick. "Reina has been helpful in the background, but leadership requires visibility, presence, relationships. Helpful in the background, like a power cable, like plumbing, like the engine, things you only notice when they stop working." I leaned back and let the silence bloom. In that silence, I cataloged everything Brackwell had taken from me without payment beyond a salary line and an occasional corporate cupcake. 15 years of weekends answering supplier panics. 15 years of late-night escalations when shipments vanished. 15 years of saving contracts by speaking fluent calm to angry clients. 15 years of watching my male peers get promoted for driving strategy while I supported execution. When the meeting ended, Theo swept out with his entourage, still wearing my accomplishments like a borrowed suit. Marina lingered just long enough to deliver her favorite kind of cruelty, the casual kind. "Do not make this personal," she said. "You are valuable here." "Then you should try treating me like it," I said. Marina gave me a pitying smile, the one executives use when they want you to confuse condescension for wisdom. "Recognition is earned." I laughed, short and sharp. "I have been earning it since I was 18. You have been withholding it since I learned how." Her eyes hardened. "You want a title? You want a seat? You should be grateful you have stability." Stability. Another word for captivity, if you say it with the right tone. I walked back to my office, shut the door, and stared at the framed employee anniversary certificate on my wall. 15 years of dedication. Someone in HR had printed it with a cheerful font, like they were awarding me a dessert menu. I opened a drawer and pulled out a folder I had been building quietly for months. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. Inside were performance reports Brackwell credited to committees that did not exist. Vendor scorecards I designed that Theo presented as his framework. Client retention notes I wrote that became someone else's relationship management. I turned on my laptop and opened a draft email addressed to an executive recruiter whose messages I had been ignoring because I still believed loyalty meant something. Subject line: ready to be seen. I typed, I can bring market share with me. Then I paused, because the real hook was not my departure. The real hook was what I planned to take back. Not files, not secrets, not anything illegal. I was going to take the one thing Brackwell had built its dominance on, me, and I was going to do it with a smile sharp enough to cut through mahogany. The recruiter, Kellen Rowe, responded faster than Brackwell ever had to my work. He called sometime in the late morning, voice warm, professional, and just curious enough to make me feel like a person instead of an appliance. Raina Caldwell, he said, I have been trying to reach you for months. I hear you quietly move mountains. Quietly is the problem, I said. He chuckled. Then let us get loud in the right place. Have you heard of Sablecrest Dynamics? I had. Everyone in our sector had. Sablecrest was Brackwell's closest competitor, the one we mocked in meetings as scrappy and hungry, while secretly tracking their wins with nervous precision. Sablecrest had been circling Brackwell's clients like a patient shark. They lacked one thing: someone who knew where Brackwell's promises were weakest. I did not know confidential information I could not share, but I knew something better: the truth about how Brackwell operated, because I built half of it. Kellen arranged a meeting with Sablecrest's COO, Soren Pike, at a quiet cafe with chairs that did not squeak and lighting that did not feel like interrogation. Soren arrived wearing simple clothes and an expression that suggested he believed in work more than theater. Raina, he said, shaking my hand like it mattered. I will be direct. We respect Brackwell's reach. We do not respect their arrogance. I heard you are the reach. I stared at him, because compliments felt suspicious after Brackwell. You heard right, I said. But respect is not a speech. It is a structure. Soren nodded. Name your structure. So I did. I explained what I could do without violating ethics: rebuild procurement reliability, improve delivery forecasting, modernize vendor performance controls, tighten client escalation pathways. None of that was stolen. It was skill. It was experience. It was 15 years of living inside the machine and knowing where it shook. Soren listened without checking his phone. That alone felt like a promotion. He slid a folder across the table. Director of Strategic Operations, it read. Real authority, decision rights, a compensation package that did not pretend my brain was a hobby, a clause that required published attribution for major initiatives, my name in writing, like a contract with reality. I asked, why the attribution clause? Soren said, because I do not hire ghosts, I hire people. People deserve credit. It is cheaper than replacing them. I felt something loosen in my chest, like a knot untying after years of being pulled tight. Still, my revenge was not just leaving. Revenge was making Brackwell feel what it meant to ignore a foundation. Back at Brackwell, Theo kept parading my results. He sent a company-wide memo about our operational renaissance, with his name at the bottom like a signature on stolen art. Marina forwarded it to the board. My inbox filled with cheerful requests from colleagues. Can you confirm the supplier matrix? Do you have the updated compliance script? Where did you store the performance dashboard? I replied politely, as I always did, with links to the official shared folders. The official folders were fine for casual browsing. The real architecture lived in my head and in systems I built properly, within policy, documented, and maintained. Brackwell had never insisted anyone else learn it. They had insisted I keep it running. Then came the performance review meeting, sometime in the early afternoon, in Marina's office with its expensive air and its decorative books that had never been opened. Marina smiled like she was about to give me a treat. "We value you," she began. I waited. Theo sat beside her, arms crossed, wearing confidence like a cologne. "You have done solid support work," he said. "But leadership roles are competitive." Marina slid a paper toward me. A modest raise that barely outpaced inflation. No title change. No bonus. No acknowledgement of the millions I saved them. No correction to the way Theo had been claiming my work. I looked at the paper and felt calm settle in. The calm that arrives when you stop hoping. "I have a question," I said. Marina's smile twitched. "Of course." "When you say you value me, what exactly do you mean?" I asked. "Besides enjoying the benefits of my labor." Theo scoffed. "Do not be dramatic." "I am not being dramatic," I said. "I am being literate." Marina's tone sharpened. "Reina, you are not irreplaceable." I nodded slowly. "You are right. I am not irreplaceable. I am portable." Theo laughed, mean and careless. "Where are you going then? To Sable Crest? They will chew you up." I smiled. "They offered me a seat at the table instead of a leash under it." Marina leaned forward. "You are bluffing." I reached into my bag and placed an envelope on her desk. Heavy paper, clean lines, no emotion, just fact. Marina read the first line and went pale in a way that made her office plants look suddenly vibrant. Theo snatched it and skimmed, then looked up at me like his brain had tripped over its own arrogance. "This cannot be serious," he said. "No contractions," I replied, standing. "So yes, Theo, it is serious." I walked out before they could find a script that worked on me. Behind me, I heard Marina say my name like it was a problem she expected someone else to solve. They were about to learn what it costs to build a company on someone you refuse to recognize. My notice period at Brackwell felt like watching people realize the floor was not guaranteed to stay beneath their feet. The messages started politely. "Reina, could you join a quick call about the vendor renewals?" "Reina, where is the latest delivery forecasting logic stored?" "Reina, can you walk Theo through the dashboard inputs?" I replied with the same professional restraint Brackwell had trained into me. Clear answers, links to documentation, and reminders that everything essential was in the shared system. Then the tone shifted. Theo appeared at my door sometime in the late morning, leaning against the frame like he owned oxygen. "You are going to leave us in a mess," he said. "I built the system you are standing on," I replied. "If you cannot stand without me, that is your confession." He stepped closer. "You owe Brackwell loyalty." "I gave Brackwell 15 years," I said. "Brackwell gave me invisibility." He lowered his voice, theatrical. "If you go to Sable Crest, you will burn bridges." I tilted my head. "Theo, you have been lighting matches under my feet for years. Do not be surprised that I learned how fire works." He tried a softer approach, which looked unnatural on him, like kindness borrowed from a stranger. "We can fix this. Marina can fast-track you. We can talk about a promotion." I looked at him, really looked, and wondered how many times he had mistaken delay for power. "I do not want fast-tracked," I said. "I want correctly placed." He left without another word, and his pride slammed the air behind him. On my final days, I cleaned my files, updated documentation, and completed offboarding exactly by policy. I transferred what was required. I did not sabotage. I did not steal. I did not forget anything that belonged to Brackwell. My revenge was simpler and sharper. I stopped donating expertise to people who treated it like a public utility. Sablecrest moved with startling efficiency. I started there soon after my badge at Brackwell stopped working, and my inbox filled with farewell messages that sounded like guilt wrapped in polite fonts. Soren Pike introduced me in a leadership meeting and said, This is Raina Caldwell. She led the transformation we have been trying to replicate for years. We will not waste her talent. We will amplify it. He said my name in the room, with no hesitation. It felt like sunlight after a long winter. My first initiative at Sablecrest had a new name because I refused to live in Brackwell's shadow. I called it the Blackbird Program. Quiet precision, fast adaptation, clean accountability. We did not chase Brackwell's clients with cheap promises. We approached them with something more dangerous: competence. I started by mapping every pain point clients experienced that Brackwell dismissed as normal friction: late deliveries, vague escalation pathways, vendor inconsistency, contract rigidity. Then I built solutions that were public, ethical, and irresistible. A client asked, "Can you guarantee delivery stability?" I said, "I can guarantee visibility. Stability follows visibility." We offered real-time vendor performance transparency, a client-facing dashboard that showed what was happening without the usual corporate fog. We offered escalation protocols that responded within minutes, not days. We offered contracts that rewarded partnership instead of punishing questions. Clients began to notice. Then they began to move. It started with a mid-tier manufacturing client Brackwell always took for granted. They called me and said, "We heard you are at Sablecrest now." I said, "I am." They hesitated. "Brackwell says you were support staff." I laughed, genuinely this time. "Brackwell has called me many things. Reality is not one of them." I walked them through Sablecrest's plan. Not a sales pitch, a strategy session. They signed within days. Word spread the way good news spreads in a market tired of being lied to. Brackwell's sales team started losing renewals. Their account managers started sweating. Their executives started scheduling urgent alignment meetings that sounded like panic wearing a tie. Then came the call from Marina. She reached me sometime in the early morning, voice clipped, trying to sound in control. "Raina, we need to discuss your transition obligations." "I completed them," I said. "This is inconvenient," she replied. "I was inconvenient when I demanded recognition," I said. "Now I am inconvenient when I am gone. You are consistent, at least." She exhaled sharply. "Clients are leaving." "Clients follow competence," I said. "You should try funding it." Theo's voice appeared in the background, muffled but angry. "Tell her she is violating." Marina cut him off. "Raina, you know our model. You know our pricing. You know—" "I know how you treat people," I said. "That is why I left." She tried one last hook. "If you return, we will give you a VP title." I smiled into the phone. "Marina, you are offering me a label after withholding the substance. I do not collect labels. I collect results." She went quiet. I added, "I started at Brackwell at 18. I gave you 15 years of my brain. You did not even give me my name in a slide deck." The line stayed silent long enough that I could hear the cost of her choices settling into place. Then I ended the call. At Sablecrest, I walked into the next meeting and watched our revenue chart climb, not because I stole anything, but because Brackwell had trained the market to expect neglect. I simply offered the opposite. Sometimes revenge is not destruction. Sometimes revenge is competence with credit. Brackwell did not collapse in one dramatic explosion. It unraveled the way cheap stitching unravels, quietly, then all at once. A procurement contract renewal failed because the wrong vendor was flagged as preferred in an outdated matrix. That matrix should have been updated. It had been updated repeatedly when I worked there. But updates require attention, and attention requires humility. Brackwell had neither. A client escalation went unanswered because the manager assigned to relationship leadership had never learned the difference between a real issue and a calendar invite. They tried to soothe the client with jargon. The client responded with cancellation. Brackwell's executives held meetings about market headwinds and unexpected shifts. They blamed economic conditions, competitor aggressiveness, and supply chain chaos. They did not blame themselves, because accountability does not thrive in rooms full of mirrors. At Sablecrest, the Blackbird program gained momentum. We built a reputation not for flashy slogans, but for reliability that clients could feel in their daily operations. The best compliment we received was not praise, it was relief. One client told me, "Your team answers questions without making us feel stupid." I replied, "We reserve our condescension for internal use only." They laughed and renewed for a longer term. Meanwhile, Brackwell escalated from persuasion to desperation. A legal notice arrived at Sablecrest, thick paper and thin arguments, accusing me of violating vague confidentiality boundaries. Soren Pike read it, raised an eyebrow, and handed it to counsel with the casual confidence of a man who knew we had done everything clean. Our attorney responded with documentation, my contract clauses, my offboarding confirmation, and the simple truth that expertise is not property. Brackwell could not copyright my competence. Then Brackwell tried a different tactic: reputation. A rumor circulated in industry circles that I was difficult, emotional, hard to manage. The usual vocabulary applied to women who refused to be grateful for scraps. I hosted a client roundtable soon after, invited several industry contacts, and did what rumors hate most. I showed receipts, not confidential data, not proprietary information, just public performance metrics, client satisfaction improvements, delivery stability charts, and testimonials from people who appreciated being treated like adults. At the end, I said, "If anyone has concerns about my temperament, I encourage you to judge it by outcomes. I have an excellent temperament for getting results." The room applauded, not because they loved drama, but because they loved clarity. Brackwell's board began to ask questions. Why were renewals dropping? Why were operational costs rising? Why did client complaints mention the same themes? Slow response, unclear ownership, lack of transparency? Theo tried to explain with his favorite tools, confidence and vagueness. The board, however, preferred numbers, and numbers are notoriously unimpressed by charisma. Marina requested a meeting with me in person, as if proximity could restore control. We met in a neutral place, a quiet hotel lounge with subdued lighting and expensive silence. Marina arrived wearing her authority like armor. Theo arrived behind her, because cowardice loves a shield. Marina opened with a practiced smile. "Reina, we can reach an understanding." I sipped water. "You can reach an apology. That would be new." Theo laughed under his breath, bitter. "You are enjoying this." I turned to him. "I enjoyed sleeping 4 hours a night to keep your company functional. This is a lighter hobby." Marina's jaw tightened. "We offered you a VP title." "You offered me a title when you needed me," I said. "When I needed you, you offered me invisibility." Theo leaned forward. "You are siphoning our market share." I smiled. "No, Theo, your clients are leaving you. I just provided a door that opened." Marina switched tactics, voice lower. "What do you want?" I let the question hang, because it deserved to echo. "What I wanted," I said, "was recognition when it mattered. A public acknowledgement, a clear path, credit attached to my work." Theo rolled his eyes. "So it is ego." I laughed, full and sharp. "Theo, you literally put your name on my work in a slide deck. If it is ego, you are the one drowning in it." Marina's expression flickered, the closest she came to shame. "We can still fix this." I shook my head. "You cannot fix a culture by bribing the person who escaped it." Theo's voice rose. "You are replaceable." I leaned in, calm as frost. "Then replace me." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out, because they had tried. And the replacements were discovering that a system is not a document you can skim. It is a mind you have to respect. I stood. "Here is the part you will hate most," I said. "I am not taking revenge by harming you. I am taking revenge by thriving without you. Your punishment is watching it happen. Marina whispered, "This is not personal." I paused and looked at her. "It became personal when you erased my name." I left them there in the lounge, sitting in their expensive silence, finally forced to experience what they had given me for years, being ignored, powerless, and unimportant. Back at Sable Crest, Soren asked, "How did it go?" I replied, "They are discovering that arrogance does not run logistics." He grinned. "Good. We have another client ready to switch." I nodded. "Send them in." Revenge, I learned, does not need fireworks. It needs follow-through. Brackwell's unraveling reached the stage where even their denial could not keep up. A major client, one of their flagship accounts, publicly announced a shift in vendor partnership strategy. The industry press did not mention my name, but the market did. People talked in quiet messages, side calls, and conference hallway whispers. Raina Caldwell is at Sable Crest. Raina Caldwell built the Blackbird program. Raina Caldwell is why Brackwell is bleeding. Brackwell called it a temporary correction. The board called it a leadership failure. Sometime later, Marina Quell was removed from operations oversight and reassigned to strategic initiatives, which is corporate language for being placed on a shelf until you accept the hint. Theo Madsen did not survive the same way. His resignation was announced with a flattering paragraph that sounded like a eulogy for a career that had died of exposure. I heard about it through a client who said, "We used to meet Theo, now we meet no one." I replied, "That sounds like progress in a sad way." At Sablecrest, we did not celebrate Brackwell's pain. We simply absorbed the market share they abandoned. It became almost routine: client calls, transparent review, tailored solution, signed partnership. One morning, as the light softened outside my office window, Soren Pike walked in holding a printed report. He did not wave it like a trophy. He placed it on my desk like evidence. "Market share," he said. "You wanted recognition. Here is recognition with numbers." The chart showed the shift plainly. Sablecrest had taken a significant chunk of Brackwell's territory, not through sabotage, but through consistent delivery and clear accountability. Brackwell's decline was the negative space around our rise. I stared at the report and felt something strange. Not triumph, but closure. For years I had been told to be patient, to keep my head down, to let my work speak. My work had spoken. Brackwell simply refused to listen until the silence hurt them. Later, an email arrived from an unfamiliar Brackwell address. Sawyer Collins was the original story's CEO, but this time it was Brackwell's acting chief, a man named Adrian Firth, someone I had met only in passing, one of those executives who always looked like he had just exited a negotiation with gravity. His message was short. "Raina Caldwell, I owe you an apology. Brackwell failed you. We built systems around your competence and then pretended your competence was incidental. I am sorry." I read it twice. Not because I doubted it, but because I wanted to feel what sincerity sounded like after years of corporate noise. Adrian asked for a call. I agreed, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity. When we spoke, his voice sounded tired in a way that suggested he had recently met consequences and did not enjoy the introduction. He said, "We cannot undo what happened, but I want to understand it." I replied, "Understanding is simple. You do not get to erase people and keep their miracles." He sighed. "We thought stability mattered more than acknowledgement." "Acknowledgement is stability," I said. "People do not stay where they disappear." He asked, "What could we have done differently?" I considered the question and felt an odd tenderness for my younger self, the 18-year-old who believed hard work would eventually earn a voice. "You could have said my name," I told him. "You could have attached credit to labor. You could have corrected Theo when he presented my work. You could have made invisibility unacceptable." Adrian was silent for a moment. Then he said, "You are right." That was the apology I had wanted years ago, when it could have saved a career inside Brackwell. Now it could only save someone else. Before we ended, I said, if you want to change Brackwell, start rewarding the people you call support. They run your company while you debate themes for parties. Adrian gave a short laugh, pained but real. Noted. After the call, I walked into a Sable Crest leadership meeting. Someone presented Blackbird's latest results. My name appeared on the slide under Program Lead, Raina Caldwell. No theatrics, no performative praise, just accurate attribution. I spoke up because I had earned the right to take up space. We keep clients because we answer problems, I said. We win because we do not treat competence like wallpaper. A junior manager smiled and said, I like working somewhere that says your name out loud. I replied, so do I. That was the revenge in the end. Not watching Brackwell suffer. Watching myself become visible, unmissable, and properly credited. 15 years at Brackwell taught me how to build systems. Leaving Brackwell taught me something more valuable. Recognition is not a gift you wait for. It is a standard you enforce. And if a company refuses to meet it, you do not beg. You outgrow them, take the market with you, and let their silence become their lesson.